Now we are going to learn about the individual examples of connective tissue. And just remember, you want to be able to describe the structure and then the location where you find this tissue in the body. So we're going to start with loose connective tissue. Remember, we have connective tissue that's just called connective tissue proper, right? So there's like 6 different types of connective tissue proper. Areolar connective tissue is a loose connective tissue, and basically it has all of the protein fibers in its extracellular matrix. It has collagen, elastic fibers, and reticular. The ground substance is kind of like a gel, and it's got a lot of different cell types. It's got fat cells, mast cells, different white blood cells, like a neutrophil is found here, which is a white blood cell, and it's a phagocyte that engulfs germs. Then we have the fibroblasts that produce more protein fibers. We have, here's the fibroblast. Here's a fibroblast, and then here's a macrophage. Macrophage, and the macrophage is a phagocyte. It's a cell that engulfs by phagocytosis. It engulfs basically anything bad that needs to be broken down. So it can be germs, it can be bacteria, or cells that are infected with virus, and it can just be old, worn out cells that need to be broken down and recycled. It's just a lot of examples. And then you see another white blood cell here called a lymphocyte. So areolar tissue is the most widely distributed connective tissue, and it supports and binds other tissues. But here's where this is how you'll probably see it worded in any questions you would have. Areolar tissue is the universal packing material between other tissues. So that's always what you associate. Areolar tissue is the universal packing material between other tissues. And it is a type of loose connective tissue. Okay, so you can find it underneath, you can find it in the dermis of the skin, underneath the epidermis, which is epithelial tissue. So under most every example of epithelial tissue in the body is going to be areolar tissue. It's going to be found underneath. It's found packaging organs and surrounding blood capillaries. So it's the universal packing material. Here's what it looks like under a microscope. It does have cells, but lots and lots of extracellular matrix. It contains all 3 protein fibers, collagen, elastin, and reticular, or elastic fibers. Collagen, elastic fibers, and reticular fibers are all found in fact, I wanted to show you that picture again so you can see collagen fibers are thick, elastic fibers are thinner than that. But remember, I told you the reticular fibers are very thin and branching. These blue fibers are reticular fibers. Okay, so areolar tissue is a loose connective tissue, and it is the universal packing material of the body. Then we have adipose tissue, which just means fat tissue. That is another type of loose connective tissue. The cells in adipose tissue are called adipocytes, which means fat cells. It functions in anywhere you have fat tissue in the body. It functions like what fat would function to do. Functions in shock absorption, so it gives us padding. It functions in insulation and also storing energy. It is highly vascular. That means it has a large blood supply. And it really doesn't have a lot of matrix. It's not surrounded by a lot of extracellular matrix. Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't see anything about areolar tissue as far as its blood supply, but it is vascular. Okay, so areolar and adipose are both vascular. They do contain a blood supply. This is what areolar tissue looks like under the microscope. Basically, every cell is filled with fat. These are fat droplets. So adipose tissue looks white under the microscope because the fat is white. And the nucleus is so filled with fat that it pushes the nucleus up to the edge of the cell, you know. So anyway, that's what adipose tissue does. It's mostly just adipocytes or fat cells, stores fat, and it provides padding and insulation. The last type of loose connective tissue is reticular. Reticular connective tissue is a loose connective tissue, and it resembles areolar but has a lot of reticular fibers, and they're a lot thinner and they branch like I showed you. And I said mushy. They form a mesh-like, it says a mesh-like stroma. It means that the tissue is mesh-like. It's mushy. Okay, so you find reticular tissue in the lymph nodes, the spleen, the bone marrow, and actually the liver. So any of your mushy organs or mushy tissue, if you've ever seen, like, I guess the only way you may have seen bone marrow would be like a chicken bone. The drumstick of the chicken, if you've ever seen inside of that chicken bone, that is the marrow. And some people in the bones of like cows, you know, or deer or something that you know, like that grazes. I don't know that you anything like that you would eat for food. Some of those pork, you know, you may have seen a ham bone and you saw the marrow inside the ham bone. You may have even eaten it. A lot of people eat it. It's very rich, very, very rich, and tastes good, but some people think it's gross and some people like to eat it. But bone marrow, and a lot of people get bone marrow when they like boil a bone that has marrow in it, boil a ham bone or something like that. That marrow flavors the broth. So anyway, but that marrow, if you've ever seen it or eaten it, is like mushy. You know, it's just a mushy material. So anyway, that's reticular tissue. Reticular tissue is a loose connective tissue, and it contains a lot of reticular fibers. And where we're really going to find it is in our lymphoid organs that are kind of mushy: lymph nodes, bone marrow, and spleen. And now we're going to talk, so we covered loose connective tissue, which is areolar, adipose, and reticular. Now we're going to cover dense connective tissue. Dense connective tissue is thicker, and it's either regular, irregular, or I can't remember the other type. Regular, irregular, or I can't think of it. Elastic. Okay, so dense connective tissue. The dense connective tissue that we call dense regular connective tissue, it is poorly vascularized, so it does not have a lot of blood supply to it. But the dense regular connective tissue are your tendons and your ligaments, and I do expect you to know the difference between tendons and ligaments. Tendons connect muscles to bone. Ligaments connect bone to bone. So tendons and ligaments, and then they also give an example here of the aponeuroses, like the aponeurosis that connects the frontal and the occipital muscles in your skull. They're muscles of your head. There's like a muscle of your forehead and a muscle at the back of your head, and they're connected by this large white sheet of connective tissue. It's like a thinner, flatter tendon. But an aponeurosis, that's what that's called. It's a sheet of tendon tissue, basically. So tendons, ligaments, aponeuroses, these are formed from dense, regular connective tissue. Dense, regular, the fibers line up and kind of parallel to one another. So tendons, ligaments, aponeuroses. Then we have dense, irregular connective tissue. This is found probably primarily in the best example is we find it in the dermis. Now, we also find loose connective tissue in the dermis, but we definitely dense, irregular connective tissue. We find that in the dermis of the skin. And so you can tell it's not arranged in a regular pattern. The fibers are not lined up parallel to one another. So, joint capsules, the fibrous capsules of organs and joints, the dermis of the skin. It's really the dermis of the skin is the best example. So there's dense regular that forms tendons and ligaments, and there's dense irregular that you find in the dermis of the skin. Then there is elastic connective tissue. And you find elastic connective tissue in the walls of many of your large arteries we call elastic arteries. Your arteries are under great pressure, so they need to be able to stretch and recoil. Okay, so that is all of our just connective tissue that we just call connective tissue proper. And I'm going to go back because I think it's real important. This is the hardest to learn, is the connective tissue proper. So connective tissue proper is divided into loose and dense. The loose connective tissue proper is areolar, adipose, reticular. And then the dense connective tissue proper is regular, irregular, and elastic. Okay? And don't forget tendons and ligaments, because I know there wasn't a note that wasn't actually in your notes, but I do expect you to know that tendons connect, tendons connect muscles to bones, and ligaments connect bone to bone. I guess here it's the definitions. Attaches muscles to bones, that would be your tendons, and attaches bones to bones, and that would be your ligaments. Okay, then we have the solid connective tissue, which is cartilage and bone. So cartilage has a matrix that is composed of sugar proteins. Well, it's basically collagen fibers and sugar proteins. So the matrix of cartilage, it's a solid matrix, but it's not as hard as the matrix of bone. But the protein fibers in cartilage are collagen fibers because they're very strong. And then the sugar proteins that form the ground substance are chondroitin and hyaluronic acid. Chondroitin and hyaluronic acid. So basically you have these collagen fibers that are surrounded by this ground substance of chondroitin and hyaluronic acid. So that is our matrix, and the cells of cartilage are called chondrocytes. Although you can have other cells like chondroblasts that are producing the matrix of the cartilage. But anyway, chondrocytes are the primary cells. Where do we find cartilage? Basically, they line the ends of bones, long bones that form the bones of your arms and legs. The ends of those bones are lined with cartilage. Cartilage is always avascular. Cartilage does not regenerate easily. It doesn't repair easily. When you damage cartilage, it's not easy for it to repair itself. But okay. There are 3 types of cartilage. The hyaline cartilage is the most abundant, and it forms gristle, like what we call gristle in our meat. But it's the most abundant. It's found at the tips of long bones, the tip of your nose, the rings that form your trachea, your larynx or voice box, and the rib cartilage. So the cartilage between your ribs and your ribs that connect to your ribs. So that's hyaline. And then there's elastic cartilage. has more elastic fibers in it, and we find it in the outer ear, and then your epiglottis, which is a flap that covers over your airway whenever you swallow food and keeps you from your food from going down the wrong way. So the epiglottis is found in your throat, basically. So the outer ear and the epiglottis are elastic cartilage. Now, let's go back. Where do we find elastic connective tissue? Walls of arteries. So make sure you keep these two distinguished from one another. Elastic connective tissue is a type of dense connective tissue. And our example that we're going to know where it's located is in the walls of many large arteries. Then elastic cartilage is found in the outer ear and the epiglottis. And then our toughest cartilage is fibrocartilage. So you're going to find fibrocartilage between your vertebrae in what we call intervertebral disc and the meniscus of the knee. So this is a picture of hyaline cartilage. Again, we find that at the ends of your long bones, the end of your nose, your trachea, your larynx, and your they're called costal cartilages, the cartilage that your rib bones are connected to. Then we have elastic cartilage that forms your outer ear and your epiglottis. We have fibrocartilage, which is found between your vertebrae and your intervertebral disc and the meniscus of your knee. Cartilage is avascular. So somebody with sports injuries where they have injured cartilage or damaged it, or over time it's just become worn down because of wear and tear, that cartilage is basically you can't repair it. So the only thing someone can do is have like a joint replacement. And then we have bone or osseous tissue. So cartilage and bone are kind of in the same group of connective tissue. It's the connective tissue basically that's has a solid matrix. So bone stores fat in your yellow bone marrow, and it synthesizes all of your blood cells in red bone marrow. All of your blood cells, red blood cells, all the different white blood cells, and even platelets are synthesized in your bone marrow. Bone has more collagen compared to cartilage. Collagen is for strength, and bone is definitely harder and stronger than cartilage. So it's got more cartilage, and it has inorganic calcium salts. So what the matrix of bone is composed of is collagen, and the ground substance is formed from calcium salts, inorganic calcium salts. That ground substance is called hydroxyapatite. So it's like a cement-like, concrete-like substance. And within that cement-like ground substance are the collagen fibers. So the cells of bone start with osteo. So osteoblasts produce bone matrix. Osteocytes are the mature bone cells that reside in, that are surrounded by the matrix. Bone is highly vascularized. Make sure you know that. Bone is highly vascularized, and bone can repair itself and remodel where cartilage can't. So bone is able to repair. If you have a broken bone, it can repair itself. And bone is like skin in a certain way because we're constantly losing bone tissue. It's at a slower rate than skin, but we constantly lose bone tissue and then rebuild it. So here's a picture of compact bone tissue under the microscope. There's two types of bone. There's compact and there's spongy. So like in the shaft or the diaphysis of your long bone is more compact bone tissue. And each unit of bone that's like layers of circular layers like this is called an osteon. It's a individual unit of compact bone. It's called an osteon. But each of the cells of bone are these little flat, you can see them, they're flat and they're kind of dark colored. Bone cells reside in their own little space called lacuna, and that is the same for cartilage cells. Cartilage cells, called chondrocytes, reside in little spaces called lacuna. So lacuna is just the space where a bone or cartilage cell resides. It's like its little house. And then outside of that is bone matrix or cartilage matrix. So anyway, this is an individual unit of compact bone tissue called an osteon. And then we have spongy bone, which you don't really see a picture of that. So, all right, and I will stop here at slide number 76 on blood. And what I'll do is I'll try to finish up this chapter in the next recording. So we'll stop this recording and start the next recording at 76 on blood.